Okie dokie, moving on. So today we're beginning a new phase of training. But before I talk about that, I would like to do a little review to remind us all what exactly we're doing and why. What exactly we're doing and why. What we're doing and have been doing. Oh, don't want to go there yet. What we are doing, what we have been doing since last September is training to be actual disciples. Actual disciples, as in the kind that make more disciples, as our Lord commanded us to do in the Great Commission. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, as you're going, make disciples of all people, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And here's the good news, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. This is not optional for the true follower of Christ, even though the prevailing church model seems to think so. Right? This is not optional. Now, based on what Jesus says here in the Great Commission, and in simple terms that I repeated for weeks on end, what is a disciple? Raise your hand. Who knows? What is a disciple? Not Grace. She always writes things down. Roger.
Follower of Christ.
Nope, not quite. What is a disciple?
Someone who knows God and does what he says.
Close. No one who knows God intimately and does what he says. Very good. So I'm going to beat this into your heads until you get it. A disciple is, in the most simplest terms, someone who knows God intimately and does what he says. Okay? And so that means making a disciple consists of what? Who wants to answer that question?
It's helping someone else to know God intimately and to do what he says like you do.
Exactly. Bravo, bravo. The process, so if being a disciple is knowing God intimately and doing what he says, making a disciple is helping someone else do the exact same thing. Just like you do yourself. And this process so the process follows the pattern of what I've been teaching called PRISM. You guys remember this? PRISM. Let's see if we remember what the letters stand for. Who can tell me what the P stands for? Grace. Pray. Excellent. Pray. And why is it necessary that that's the first one? Why is it important that pray has to be the beginning of this? Not Grace. Here it is. Paul.
You want to invoke the power of God into this and basically bring in, help use God to soften their heart, use God to
True.
help the.
That's helpful. Why is it necessary?
Start with.
Well, we're not doing it.
What did Jesus say in John chapter 6? Twice. Okay, Grace.
Only God can draw someone to him.
That's right. Jesus said, no one can come to me unless the Father draws them, unless the Father enables them, which means we cannot initiate salvation for someone. You can talk to someone until you're blue in the face, until they're frustrated, but if God has not done his part first, you're wasting your time. We must pray for God to do his part first, before and during all of the rest of this. Remember that. And this won't be the. We're going to keep talking about this.
What's the verse of it?
The verse is, it's John chapter 6. I don't remember the specific numbers, but it's in John chapter 6. 2 places. I'm always good at remembering chapter, not always the verse. So, all right, who remembers what the R is? R is someone who's not answered yet.
Relate.
Relate. Okay, what specifically, and why is this necessarily second? Why is relate second? You can answer.
Because that's what you should do after the prayer.
Right. or better question is, why is it before the other three?
Because you have to have a relationship with somebody before they're going to do it.
Before you can do the other thing. That's right. And so R is not just relating to those outside the faith, it also, as we stressed for months, it's relating to each other, because our unity does what? What does our unity do?
Shows God.
True.
It's love. It's love.
Shows.
Yeah. What did Jesus say when he prayed in John 17? Lord, make them one as we are one, so that.
They'll know you are my disciple.
Yeah, close. So that the world will believe.
Oh,
Will believe. Our unity makes our message believable. Okay, remember that our unity makes the message believable. Okay, who can tell me what the I stands for? Someone who's not answered yet.
Invite.
Who's that?
Invite.
Invite, that's right. Aaron, good job. Invite. So it's great to pray for them, it's great to relate to them, but if you never actually invite them to the party, they're probably not going to come. And that's what this is. That's what Sandy just covered for 4 weeks about how do we invite them. We relate to them so that we can invite them. Not to church. We don't invite them to church. We invite them into the kingdom. We share the gospel with them. We invite them into the family. Excellent. So, who can tell me what the S stands for? Someone who's not answered yet. S. Troy, what's the S stand for? Don't remember. Okay. Not you, Grace. Not you, Paul. You already answered. Debbie, you remember? No? Show. It stands for show. Show. And this is what we're going to be talking about soon. The S stands for now that you've invited them into the family, you have a relationship with them, you've been praying for them, you still don't bring them to the church and delegate all the discipling to the pastor. You show them the basics. You show them how to live the Christian life because you're living it. That's what the S stands for. And who remembers what the M stands for? Merge. Merge them with the mission. Merge them with the church, however you want to phrase it. All right. Okay. You guys did all right. You did okay. Okay. So, like I said, we began. In case you haven't noticed, we've already covered the P, R, and I of PRISM. We began with several weeks of prayer in which we put those names on the cross over there and started praying for them, something that we've gotten away from that I'd like to get back to, so you'll see some more of that in the near future. We also spent about 2 months, like I said, on relating, specifically relating to each other and the importance of unity. I already talked about that. But the thing is, we cannot stop there. We cannot stop just being that real family. We must not stop at making our message believable. We must invite them. And we must, in fact, we must continue practicing every part of the pattern. We must continue praying for the lost. You don't just pray for the lost and then start relating to them and stop praying for them. You pray throughout. You relate throughout, and then invite, at times throughout, and then the show is also going to be throughout. And again, it's not inviting them to church. It's inviting them into the kingdom of God, into the family. But it doesn't end there because Jesus did not say go out and make converts and then delegate the discipling to professional. No, he said to each of his disciples, you disciple others. Jesus wasn't going to be around anymore for them to have him do it, right? So he had been discipling them this whole time. He was going away. And so he's like, it's your turn. But of course, he said, you will not be on your own. They had the Holy Spirit inside of them, guiding them. The same Holy Spirit, the same God that we have guiding us to fulfill the same command to make disciples, which does not stop at a confession of faith and a dunking in some water. That's not the end goal. That's just the beginning, actually, of a new journey of growing in the knowledge of God and learning to do what he says. A journey that is best taken with a personal guide to show the way. And who better to do that than the slightly further along disciple of Christ who helped them get there in the first place, i.e., you. In other words, our personal responsibilities of making disciples do not end when the person says yes to the invitation. This is actually when the fun part begins. The part where you get to tell an eager student all that you can about the great God that you serve and show them how they too can experience the joy of living for him. That's when the fun part begins. And that is the S in PRISM, which is show and tell. Show and tell. So how many of you remember doing show and tell in school? Anybody? Yeah. I don't know if they still do that, but we did when I was a kid. And for those unfamiliar with the concept, show and tell was a day in school when each student would get to bring something that was special to them to class, show it to them, and tell the class about it. Show and tell. It's kind of cool. Well, in the context of the discipleship PRISM, the class is the people that we have relationships with, and what we're showing and telling about is our faith, the Christian faith, what we believe and why we live it, and so on and so forth. It's about helping them grow up now that they have been born again. It's helping them grow up now that they've been born again. Growing in the faith consists of learning more about God and progressively shaping your life to match his will. So it's knowing him intimately, doing what he says, also known as bearing fruit. This is one of the things that Paul prayed for his churches In Colossians 1, he says, "For this reason, since the day we heard about you, we've not stopped praying for you. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God." This is the goal. In fact, there are numerous passages in Scripture, especially the New Testament, that urge believers to grow beyond infancy into maturity. But it's the words of Jesus himself that illustrate just how eternally important it is. This is not just an option. It's eternally important. And he talks about it in the parable of the soils, and you'll just listen. This is found in Luke chapter 8. It says, "While a large crowd was gathering and people were coming to Jesus from town after town, he told this parable. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path. It was trampled on, and the birds ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground, and when it came up, the plants withered because they had no moisture. Other seed fell along thorns, which grew up with it and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, and it came up and yielded a crop 100 times more than was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear." And then when the disciples asked, what does this mean? Because they never knew what the parable meant. He says, "This is the meaning of the parable. The seed is the word of God. Those along the path are the ones who hear, and the devil comes and takes away the word from their hearts, so that they do not believe and be saved. Those on the rocky ground are the ones who receive the word with joy when they hear it, but they have no root. They believe for a while, but in the time of testing they fall away. The seed that fell among thorns stands for those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by life's worries, riches, and pleasures, and they do not mature. But the seed on the good soil stands for those of the noble and good heart who hear the word, retain it, and by persevering produce a crop." Notice that everyone who accepts the word, that not everyone who accepts the word actually keeps it. Not everyone who accepts the word actually keep it. Some don't develop roots, and they fall away at the first time of testing. Others grow some, but then they lose focus and fall away. But the ones that accept the word and retain it or keep it and persevere in it, they bear fruit. In other words, according to Jesus, it is quite possible for someone to accept the invitation, to respond positively to the gospel, even say a salvation prayer, but it not be fully genuine. The sign of a true conversion, of a true change in heart, of a new creation is growth, producing fruit, which takes time to see. That is why it is a mistake for churches to tout salvation numbers based on boxes checked on prayer cards. Some people get saved every single week. Right? The indication of a true conversion experience where the Holy Spirit is now calling the shots is that in someone's life is a hunger and thirst for the things of God. When they have a true conversion experience, they will have a hunger and thirst for the things of God, what Hebrews calls spiritual milk. Spiritual milk, just like a baby, right? And just like a little baby cannot feed itself, neither should a new believer be handed a Bible and just told to eat up. They wouldn't even know where to begin. Nor should they be directed to start sitting through Bible lectures in the local church. That's like taking a toddler to the 10th grade. And we shouldn't take the church and start teaching only at the toddler level to account for it. In fact, that's exactly what's gotten us into the mess we're in as a church, church-wide. No newborn babies, toddlers, and so on need personal care and instruction according to their development. We all know this as parents, as people that have been around kids, right? We all know that little kids can't just be sent off on their own and to figure it out for themselves, and y'all shouldn't put them in a teaching that's too high for them. They got to be it's personal, it's unique to each one, and you grow them up and you train them in the way they should go, slowly according to their developmental age and things like that. Well, the same is true for growing believers. Just because they all look like adults, they're still babies. All right? Which is why Jesus told his disciples, you teach them, you disciple them, you show them the way. But don't worry, I'll be right there with you. And the command and the promise are the same for us, for every disciple of Christ. Just like it is expected for a baby to grow up into a productive adult, that can then turn around and help another baby do the same thing, it is also expected that we individually, as believers in Christ, grow up in the faith so that we can turn around and help others do the same thing. You see how parenting and all that's such a great model for what God has set up for here? As the writer of Hebrews says in Hebrews 5, he says, you have been believers so long now that you ought to be teaching others. Instead, you need someone to teach you again the basic things about God's Word. You are like babies who need milk and cannot eat solid food. He could easily have been writing a letter to the whole modern American church. We now have multiple generations of church people who should be teaching others, but instead are just satisfied with endless weekly bottle feedings. Are we not? Do you realize that if you've been in regular attendance at church for more than 10 years, which I think most of you probably have, that you have the equivalent lecture hours of a bachelor's degree in biblical studies? 10 years. Now, if you've been in church for more than 20 years, you have the equivalent of the degree I have, a master's in divinity. Same number of lecture hours. So why aren't you teaching others? If that is you. No, I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I'm really not. But I'm hoping to put things into perspective. And like I've said before, it's not entirely your fault or our fault. The system we grew up in set us up for this result. And we're not an exception. Us, Reality Church, we are not an exception. At least we haven't been up until now. Yes, we've been doing things different than other churches, you know, the tables and the talking to each other and all that. And I would say that we have made significant progress in a lot of areas, but I'm pretty sure that most of you do not have someone you are personally discipling. Someone you are in the process of teaching the basic things about God and showing them how to live according to His Word. I'd imagine most of you do not have someone that you, a single person, that you are personally taking responsibility for to disciple, to grow up in the faith. Some of you may be, and that's great, but I'd say most of us do not. And I'll tell you why. Because I have failed you as a teacher. Because I have failed you as a teacher. Sure, I've done a lot of teaching, and some of it pretty good teaching, if I do say so myself. Like especially that 30-week Revelation series. Oh, I so want to do that again. But anyway, yes, I've done a good bit of teaching, and many of you expressed how much you enjoy my teaching, but nevertheless, I have failed you as a teacher because the purpose of the teaching gift is not for filling your head with interesting information week after week. The purpose of the teaching gift is to turn you into teachers. It's right there in Ephesians 4, the passage we spent several weeks on before Christmas. Ephesians 4:11. And Christ Himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and the teachers to equip the saints to do the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, and so on. Jesus gave me the gift of teaching, not so that I can make a career out of delivering impressive lectures week after week, but to equip you to teach those people in your path that will never come listen to me. That's what the teaching gift is for, and I have failed to do that. But that's about to change. For this new phase of training, show and tell, what we're going to do is actually go back to school. Or actually go to school. You know, I've been calling the modern church lately endless school. You guys have heard me say that before, but really, that's not an accurate description because actual school is designed for learning. Whereas the church we currently know is designed for entertainment. It really is. It's more like a television show than a classroom because in school, you actually do have homework. You have quizzes and exams and papers to write so that you're forced to internalize the things that you hear in the lecture and read in the book, right? And even then, the learning is only temporary unless you use what you learned in the real world situation. How many have been in college or school and you don't remember any of it, right? Even though you wrote a paper, you passed the test, right? Well, in the modern church, you're not required to do any of that. None of it. And so you can sit through lecture after lecture, year after year, and never really internalize any of it. Any of it. Yes, it stimulates your brain while you're listening, and so does music on the radio or a good documentary on television, but once the show or song or lecture is over, that's the end of it. No lasting effect. And again, I am not trying to make anyone feel guilty. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. What I do hope to do is that I hope this helps you understand, helps some of you understand why you feel like you don't know anything despite having been in church for a long, 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 long time. I've heard many of you express this. You feel like, I don't know enough to talk to someone about my faith, yet you've been in church for years and years and years. And why is that? It's because the system is set up for that. It's set up to entertain you, not to actually cause you to learn something you can teach someone else. And so that's the church system we've inherited, but it's not the one we have to settle for. In fact, I, for one, and I believe most of you, if not all of you, refuse to settle for this. I think this is why you're still here. After all that we've been through the past couple of years, you are tired of just going through the motions and playing church. You're tired of coming week after week and still actually feeling like you can't teach someone else these things. Deep in your heart, you want to be a real disciple who makes more disciples. You just never quite known how to do it. Well, that is why we have been on this journey together, learning how to make disciples by praying for them, relating to them, and inviting them into the kingdom. And now we're going to take the training up a notch or two as Sandy and I shift from teaching at you to equipping you to teach. It's like the ancient Chinese proverb. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man how to fish and you feed him, and I would say also those he feeds, for a lifetime, right? So what exactly am I talking about going back to school? Well, exactly what it sounds like. In addition to lectures, we're going to have reading assignments and homework and quizzes and papers to write. Just kidding about the papers to write, though. But if you do want to write one, I'll grade it for you, okay? Extra credit. But seriously, one thing you will definitely be doing is practice teaching. Practice teaching. And by that, I do not mean getting up in front of the class like I do, but teaching each other at your tables in personal conversations, similar to how you did the 3 circles last week. Kind of like shared it with each other, right? Because the best way to learn how to teach is to teach. You can't do it just by hearing about it. You have to actually do it. And the format will be likely a lot like what it was today. Starting with a celebration time, followed by a quiz over the previous material, maybe some review, and a new lesson, followed by discussion and practice. We'll likely employ handouts, maybe even fill-ins as appropriate, and we plan on giving out 3-ring binders to every one of you so you can keep all this good stuff in one place. It'll be just like going to school. If you want a Trapper Keeper, though, you'll have to purchase that on your own. Yeah. Woo! Knight Rider. That was my favorite back in the day. You could hear the whole class, you know. All right, so that's how we will be training. That's what Sunday mornings will look like. But what exactly are we training on? Well, it'll be the basics or fundamentals of the faith. Here's a list Sandy and I have come up with so far. We'll be teaching on the Bible. So everything we know about our faith actually comes from the Bible. So it would be good if you knew a few things about it, such as where did it come from? How was it put together? How is it that we can trust it? You know, how do we use it? We'll also be talking about prayer some more. We'll be talking about the Trinity. So how to understand the Trinity. Who is God? Who is God? God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. We'll be talking about the story of creation, the basic storyline from the beginning to the new beginning. We'll be talking about heaven, hell, and the kingdom of God, angels, demons, and the devil, key people in the Bible. The cost and benefits of discipleship, the greatest commandments, love God, love others, and also the Big Ten, baptism, communion, tithing, giving, the church. What is the church? The family of God. Spiritual gifts, the APES thing, serving in the church, Great Commission, and probably some more things like that. And if all of that sounds pretty basic to you, it's because it is. The goal of this training, so in case that sounds like, man, I already know all that stuff, do you? Do any of you feel like you could go that whole list and teach someone else who doesn't know anything? Everything there is to know about those things.
So as a church, you're saying, we've already went over all this material, but you're going to teach us how to teach people this material.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
It's a very different mindset, and this is going to be hard for me and Sandy because, you know, if I'm honest, I like putting together an hour-long sermon that like wows you with the Greek and all that stuff. But that's not what this is going to be. This is going to be us teaching you how to teach someone this stuff. So it's going to be really basic, really simple. But the idea is that when you walk away, when you practice these things during the week and such and do it, that you could actually get up or explain to someone the Trinity. You can explain to them the importance of God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. You can explain to them where the Bible came from and why we can trust it in simple terms, not having to go into great complex stuff. Does that make sense? In other words, we want to equip you so that you actually do feel confident going out there and sharing your faith and not worried about if they ask you a question. Because you actually know your stuff. Because you've been practicing. You've been actually teaching it to people for a while now. That's the idea. And so that's the plan. That's the plan for the foreseeable future. And my hope and prayer is that each one of you will fully engage with this, and as you have thus far, that you will continue abiding in the vine. Remember that? Abiding in the vine, making that vertical relationship your top priority, because without that, can we do any of this? None of it, right? And I pray that you keep practicing the letting your light shine by the way you live, the narrow way of love, that you keep doing that we continue praying for those names on the cross, right? Asking God to open hearts, asking God to use us in the process, that we continue relating to each other, building up the unity and love for each other, that the world will believe, right? And relating to others so that they'll see the light that we have, that we continue practicing the art of initiating conversations with others, right? The hi, how are you? The 3 circles, honing your personal faith stories, looking for opportunities to actually invite someone to repent and believe in Jesus. And my hope and prayer and my belief is that as we continue in all these things, as we continue in these things and engage fully in the equipping we're about to do for show and tell, that God will reward our efforts by actually giving us people to make disciples of. That a year from now, when I ask for a raise of hands of who has a person that they are personally discipling, that every one of us will be able to raise a hand. Because we've worked through this, because we've intentionally said, God, we want to be real disciples who are ready and prepared to make other disciples. And if we're that, He will, I assure you, He will give us people to disciple. Because God has not done all this work in us to no end. It hasn't just been a fun ride. And of this we can be confident that God, who began a work in us, will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. May it be so. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we worship you this morning. We glorify you. We thank you for all that you have been doing in us, how you've been shaping and molding us. Give us the desire to continue in this training, to push through what may seem different or a little more challenging or require a little more time on our ends. Lord, give us that hunger and desire to know you, to know your word in such a way that when you bring that person who you're drawing, that you're wanting to change their life, and you say, I want to use you, Pete. I want to use you, Roger. I want to use you, Aaron. That you'll be ready. That we'll be ready, God, because we've worked, because we've put your word in our hearts so that we actually know it. Give us that desire. Give us that capacity, Lord. And we ask for this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Well, alrighty. Discussion time. So, what kind of questions or thoughts? And by the way, before we're done today, we're going to do a straw poll vote on our church's new name. So before we get to that, so you can be thinking about that, what thoughts do you have about about what I just talked about, or anything, actually. This is one of those open forum kind of discussion times. Cool.
So we go back to the prism and the pray.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding in the capacity of, like the names up here, people that we know that are away from God, we're trying to be back, we're praying for God to interact or soften their heart and that type of stuff. But in the other capacity, where we're moved by the Holy Spirit, I think the prayer is important there, that we become God's vessel to move and do the things that we need to do.
Yes.
And I say that, and I'll just bring up a thing that happened recently with me, and I think prayer would have made a difference, but because I felt moved by I was going Thursday night to do the beginning of the month, the stuff I do with the with the church. It's a healing piece. Anyway, but on my way up there, I was going to eat, and I just felt moved that I not grab something to eat until I got up in that area because of the homeless and the folks that are in the area down by the beach. So as I pulled over to a place, I wouldn't see anyone, but as soon as I pulled over, somebody walked by that pretty gruff looking, and I, felt like, well, maybe I should interact with him, but then I didn't. But I, so I went ahead and pulled my car back up and turned around trying to think about it a different way. Then he walked right by in front of me as he was going to the 7-Eleven. So I had a second chance. At that time I looked up and I saw I was right across the street on Pacific from over in Atlantic at your hotel. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll go invite Daniel to at this movie, and it's like, no, that's not right. So I came back across, I went back to the place I was going to get a sandwich at the Subway there, and as I parked, my third opportunity came as he came back by with a 6-pack of beer and walked back in front of me, and I still didn't act. But it was kind of a conviction that I think if when I first stopped, I would just pray that it would make a difference. So I just wanted to share that.
No, that's a very good point. It's not just praying that God will do his part. It's also saying, God, give me the courage when you call to say yes. And yeah, that's very true. You should certainly be praying for yourself as well. What else? We have time to kill, so kids aren't done. I could go through the slides again. Grace.
How does this pair with the discipleship core and missional community aspect? Because this feels very individual, which I know we should be doing as well. But how might it partner with that plan?
That's a good question. Now, so you mentioned this being individual. Actually, one of the big goals I didn't speak of, as we do this school thing, it is going to be a team effort. I want us working together. So when we have our little quizzes and things like that, you can work together. Because this, work together. Yeah, Nicole. This is a team effort. Jesus didn't have a private meeting with each of his 12 disciples and say, "Here's what I want." No, he said it to all of them in plural form. You make disciples. So that's what our goal is that we do this together. We work together. We lean on each other. And you mentioned discipleship cores and missional communities. This is all part of that, because if we truly want to be a missional community church, which this Mission GE that we're doing right now is like training ground for that. We actually have a discipleship core of 10 people, and we're interacting with people that may or may not be in the faith, or at least not living it, and so we're inviting them in. And so we want to be prepared to be able to speak to them intelligently about our faith if they have questions, and as we're sharing things with them. And so it equips us. To be able to do that. And so as we move in the direction of missional communities as a church, and we start forming the discipleship cores, this is training for doing that. So does that make sense? Yeah, very much so. Because the goal of this, and here's what I see as kind of a big picture, longer term. It won't be like this forever. Okay, this way we're teaching and training, where we're kind of going through these phases of training, building up towards something. Because eventually the goal is you're going to graduate. This isn't endless, right? You're gonna get to a place where now, instead of the discipleship and gospel sharing model being, all right, you guys get out there and invite everyone to church so that the pastor can do it. You guys are doing it out there with people who more than likely wouldn't come to church, right? Because if they would come to church, they'd probably already be in one. But they don't want to come to church until they are part of the church. And so it creates a much larger footprint. It actually spreads out exponentially instead of linearly. And so as you're doing that, as we're all feeling equipped and we're out there and we got these people that we're discipling and such, then this place becomes a place for encouragement and further equipping, and we actually start equipping each other, not just me equipping you. And we'll actually maybe start looking more like Ephesians 4, where we have all of our various giftings and we're really truly helping each other out and our gifts start showing. Because what I think is going to happen is that, and this is what I hope happens, but I also think it will happen, is that as each of you engage in this, and say you start really trying, and you do the homework, you do the reading, maybe even practice teaching someone during the week, and then you come here on Sunday morning, and it's quiz time, and you find that you actually can do it. That you don't have to like pull up an app or cheat off of your friend, that you actually can, like in yourself, something you thought you couldn't do before, you find yourself able to explain something that otherwise you may have heard a million times but you couldn't seem to articulate it, that will cause an excitement in you, like a hunger, like, wow, this really is possible, that I really can, like, no kidding, be someone who can teach someone these things. And it'll make you want to do it more, because at least that's how it works for me. So I'm hoping that is, because the truth is, I know many of you tested high on teachers, so you should love this, right? Yeah. So, Paul?
I'm going to say, are you looking at, are you making a part of that time where you're actually going through, and be it like yourself or Sandy yourself, are the recipients, and having folks going through and participating? I mean, because a lot of this sounds like, it's funny that, but like drill sets, and it's the actual, in drill sets, the biggest thing is the actual hands-on doing it. That tacit knowledge is not really any, it's like riding a bicycle. You can look at PowerPoints, you can look at YouTubes all day, but you're not going to learn how to ride a bicycle until you get on it and ride it. And some people, I think, are not, when they walk away from here, they're not going to practice those skill sets at home like they would in an environment where it's like, okay, your turn, do the drill.
Right. That's the goal, is that Sunday mornings will turn into probably a shorter message from me or Sandy, depending on the topic, with the goal of like, hey, here's how you teach this, but here's the main points you need to hit, that kind of thing. Now we're going to spend the next 45 minutes of our time, you take turns teaching it to each other at your table and correcting each other as you're moving along. And then probably there will be points in time where, just like we did with Sean right there, where we have a pop quiz where you write something down and then I say, all right, who wants to put it up on the board and explain it, that kind of thing. So there will be, I know not everyone's comfortable speaking in front of a group of people, but the point is that yes, on Sunday mornings you will be actually doing teaching exercises. And there'll be a sign during the week, and hopefully you'll do those too, but at least on Sunday morning you'll get opportunities to do what we're talking about doing. Not just hear about it and think, oh, I got it because I heard about it. No, you got to do it. You got to actually teach it out. So, yeah.
This is a little off topic, but something I've been meaning to ask. So your team is, I'm sure, praying and relating with the people in the class. Can we have a prayer list? Are we allowed to know first names or something so we can?
No, unfortunately, because of the HIPAA, right? Is that what it is? We can't divulge personal information about anyone in the class. Okay. But you can just be praying in general, you know, like we have approximately 10 or 11 moms. Most of them do in the May time frame. Most of them have a support person, father of the baby, that kind of thing. And yeah, so just be praying that God does His thing, and we start relating, and they're drawn. So yeah, but eventually, once I think we're out of the class and stuff, those that stick with our group at that point, then they become part of our family, and it can become a bit more personal. So, but until then, we have to follow rules. So yeah, good question. Mm-hmm. Anybody scared to death of this next phase of training?
So I didn't do homework in high school. I didn't do homework in middle school. I don't do homework in the Navy unless it makes me money, it makes me ranked. It makes sense. So homework is a problem for someone like me. But I can teach. I teach, 700-800 people every day. That's not a hard thing to do.
You know?
It's about learning the material without having to do homework. How do you do
Right.
that? Because I dropped out of high school in 10th grade and made up 2 years in 1 month by taking tests.
Well,
Took
we're
tests to
not.
graduate on time.
We're not in the
You can do that.
matrix, so we cannot just download things. That really is only one way to learn stuff. You have to do it. And so what I mean by homework, it might include videos to watch. It might include things to read or listen to. But mainly what I will want you to do is practice teaching somebody. It can be your spouse. It can be a kid. It doesn't have to be like a stranger on the street. But like, for instance, week 1, next week, I plan on going through some of the basics of the Bible. Like, what are the books of the Bible? Why are they in that order? Some very simple stuff. And then the goal is you'll have a bullet list of like 5 things. And then during the week, you just take some time where you go through teaching it to somebody. Whether that be reading it off your sheet or from memory or something like that, just so you actually get like what's his name said, reps. Actually, not just because there's such a huge difference, and I think we all know this, is that you can hear something many, many, many times, but as soon as you have to go from here to here, it's like it's gone. Such as what is a disciple? I mean, I literally put that exact same slide on the board for like 2 months, like every week for 2 months, and yet most of you in the room still can't spit it out. Why is that? Because you don't practice it, right? You don't practice it. So makes me feel real good. But yeah.
It's the difference of recall versus recognition on tests. That's why where you have to answer the question is a more difficult question than multiple choice. We just have to recognize it. But having tutors nursing school students over the years, there's research that shows that if you're just sitting in a lecture and listening, you will only retain about on average 5% of what you hear. But if there's different ways of engaging with the material to increase it. But the most effective way to retain up to 90% of what you're learning is by teaching it back to somebody else, even if it's not in a formal setting, doing peer teaching and things like that.
Yeah.
Increases it from 5% lecture up to as high as 90% by teaching.
Yeah. So there really is no way around it. This is if we want to be a people who don't just come here to get bottle fed every week. Because unfortunately, that's what it turns into. When you hear a great talk, it's got Greek in it, it's got Hebrew in it, and all that stuff, and you're simulating, like, oh, I felt like I really learned something, but then literally that same day, you wouldn't be able to explain it to someone else.
So you see a point in the future as folks, are all doing this. So we're at this point where everyone has a disciple or multiple disciples. Maybe lots of mission type groups. This meeting that we come together as kind of this core piece, that would be different people explaining what is working for them and going over different topics and sharing that type of stuff. So it'd be higher level learning, but other people teaching that to get. Yeah,
I think it'll be a mixed bag. That it'll be less of always me standing up here talking at you. That doesn't mean there won't be times when I get back to teaching like I used to, and the deep stuff, because that's good stuff too. We need to learn things like that. That's also what the teaching gift is for. It is for teaching, but not only for teaching. It's for equipping. And so since and again, I'm not blaming any of you. This is the system we all inherited. This is why we're in the nest friend. And so Sandy and I, in prayer and talking about this, we have to do something different if we want a different result. Right? We all know that that's how things work in the world. And so we're going to attempt to actually equip and not just teach it. And so the best way we know how is, well, the way to learn teaching is you got to teach. You're just kind of like the way to learn fishing, and you have to actually go fishing. That works. So, yeah. But it'll just like anything, we have our idea right now of how this is going to work, and it's going to change as we move along, as we work together. And what I want you to understand is this is not just going to be something me and Sandy want to drive and shove down your throats. You have a say. Like, speak up, engage. This is us learning together to be different than what we are now. This is us, in a sense, covenanting together to say we want to be true disciples that make disciples, and so we're going to put in the work together, working together, maybe even holding each other accountable such that we can actually do this and not just talk about doing it. Make sense? So, any other questions or thoughts or objections?
Maybe just a statement, the fact that I probably agree 100% with your assessment of where the church is at and how we teach people, in a sense. I mean, especially being a product of that myself, which I definitely am. Being raised in church ever since probably my mother was pregnant with me, most likely, for sure. I think one of the best things the church probably ever did was having Awana.
That's a great.
Yeah. My kids love it.
Yeah. Love Awana.
I think that's the most I ever learned probably when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then after that, that's when it just kind of all went downhill from there.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to be getting your adult teaching.
Right.
There's no sense whatsoever. I mean, I could recite to you every single book of the Bible for some reason. I don't know why.
Because it's so, yeah.
I don't know why I could do that,
Yeah.
but it never went really past that with the teaching aspect of what you're saying. I don't know that it was necessarily like any grand scheme of anybody in particular, except for probably like the devil himself, slowly leading it down that route so that we would have to just be milked off the church for the rest of our lives. And if you ever see anybody actually evangelize, everyone's like, ooh, that guy's a future pastor.
Right.
He's going to be a televangelist or something like that. He's clearly gifted because he's actually witnessing to somebody. It's like, that's for him. I'd have called him to do that.
Right. But he has.
And it's the opposite for me. I was raised in the church, but we didn't have Sunday school, or we had youth group, but it was mostly just hanging out. So I couldn't recite the books of the Bible, even if you asked me to.
Yeah.
I mean, I could look at the general context.
Right.
That's about it.
And this is the scenario we're in. And again, I hope none of you hears like it's your fault, you did something wrong. This is the situation we find ourselves in. This is what the church system has created, and so we're gonna do something different to get a different result. That's the idea.
I actually can't believe I'm actually raising my hand to talk, but
Hey, darling.
I follow a gentleman. His name is Jeremiah Johnson. He's a pastor in Lakeland, Florida, and he's prophetic, and he writes quite a few books, and my spirit just really attaches with his.
Okay.
And he's been mentioning that the way that the church is going to be going is changing because the hyper grace stuff isn't working. It's just out there for a season. It's going to be what you're doing. So what you're doing, I keep hearing this in my head while I'm sitting here, is that you're going to be teaching us the way that it should be instead of jumping around in church for 10, 15 minutes and then leave and forget everything else that they're talking about. Now, don't get me wrong. I like music. I like it. I get it. But it's deeper. It's like a new wineskin that's going to be laid down. And when you kept talking about this, I kept hearing that, and I thought, well, I know that I'm where God wants me and my husband. And this will be right down his alley too, because he always says that he doesn't know anything, But, you know, the man has a heart of gold, and he's willing to try,
Good.
you know, so this will be good for both of us, but it's in the right direction where we're actually gonna be able to reach out and help somebody instead of thinking we can.
Right.
I don't like tests, I'm gonna be honest with you. My mind goes blank, and so I don't know how I'm gonna get through this,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
But we can work together
We'll
on
work
that.
together.
But don't, never mind the word he said, cheating off your neighbor, because that's not true.
You're
You said we
helping,
can
you're
help.
working
That's
together,
right.
that's right. No, thank you for that. No, and it, you know, this is, you know, my friend Mike Pumphrey, you know, the guy that came here and spoke at one time, you know, I talked to him about this, he's excited about it. This is, I believe what he said, that we're part of a grassroots reformation, that God is he's changing the face of what church is in America. And it doesn't mean that the attractional model is going to go away. It doesn't mean that the majority still won't be part of that model, but we got to do what God's calling us to do. And this is what I personally feel convicted, and Sandy as well, is that we, you know, it was actually this past summer, I think it was, when I really just started feeling that burden for, like, what can we do so that people actually remember and do the things we teach every Sunday. And I remember talking to another pastor, he's like, well, if you can figure that out, let me know. Because it's crazy frustrating. You know, I know this stuff. Why? Because I teach it. And so when I teach it, like, I put a lot of time in it. And then it would always be interesting to me that, like, someone would mention something, oh yeah, I taught about that 6 months ago, don't you remember? No, they don't, of course. It's like, and so it's, but again, it's not about me. The goal of the teaching gift is not so that I can teach. It's so that you can learn. And so how we do that isn't always going to be me up here speaking at you. You learn by actually doing. And so that's why we've been doing all this stuff over the past several months, and why this next phase, since we're actually wanting to learn real information, the only way to do that is to speak it out, to say it to someone else out loud, from memory ideally, but if you have to use a guide or a resource, that's fine too. Still, that's why Awana works, because the kids have to memorize verses, and they do that by first reading them and then saying them and reading them, and then finally, eventually, they get to the point where they can rattle them off like nothing else because they had to say it out loud to somebody from memory. It's the only way that our brain actually learns information. So that's what we're going to do. Cool? All right. Nothing else. I'd like to shift to our name. Now, so today, we're about a month now since I presented the vision talk, in which I made the argument that we need to change our name, and I think everyone agrees with that. The question is, what will our name be? I presented a certain name at the time, and then another conversation broke out, and then another conversation broke out, and over the course of the last month, through conversations I've had with different people, and maybe you've had with different people, it pretty much boils down to one of two names. It begins with real family.
Can you use a darker pen?
You can't read that?
Nope.
I'll use black. It doesn't get darker than that. Real family. Everybody see that? Kind of? I think we're all in agreement on that. If you're not, that's okay. You can speak up today. But the question is, real family what? And in a video, I made the case that what this third line needs to be, what this third part of our name needs to be, is what we are effectively to outsiders, for the main point. So in a sense, your business entity, such as bank names always have the word bank in them, so that people know they're a bank, not a social club or something else, right? And so we need something in our name that says what kind of business entity, what kind of thing we are, okay? And so the two options that have been most prevalent are the one that I initially suggested, fellowship, and then the other is church. So the question is, today's not an official vote because really today's just kind of a question to see where we sit as far as us thinking and praying about this, is which one should we be? So who, by a raise of hands, and this is what we do, a straw poll vote. Raise of hands, who thinks it should be fellowship? Raise of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And who thinks it should be church? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. And I haven't voted because I'll break a tie or something like that. Okay. That's interesting. So on the church side, would one of you three like to make a case for why you think it should be church?
I've been to churches that had the name fellowship in them, and it just comes to mind as very stuffy and not really fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I believe it's a very dated name.
Okay.
And church is very on point.
Okay. Nicole?
I think just from explaining what we are and who we are, and even from a marketing standpoint, simpler. I think it's better, and I think church is the simplest you can get, because when people think about a religious entity of people meeting together on a weekly basis, that's what they think of as the word church.
Okay. Who would like to make a case for fellowship? Paul?
I'm going to start off by saying I was in the church camp for the longest time. I wanted something other than fellowship. I had other, I would say, altar of many other names, and I won't get to those. Even one of them that I was hung up and made a big long case for in an email. But it was analogous with fellowship. But I think the thing that really kind of sealed the deal with me was in the men's Bible study yesterday, looking at kind of the root of the word church was really about a building, and when we really talk about where we're going with this as a body, it's more about the relationship and people, and fellowship I think speaks more to relationship and people than church does, because church, a lot of people still are confused, especially non-believers. It is that building over there or that building over there, and it's not that body of people, the ecclesia. And that's really what we're trying to get across, is it isn't about that building over there or the building over there. It's about a relationship with God, and it's about a relationship with each other.
Okay. Mike, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so before we came to Reality, like, I've been to churches all over the world. And until Reality was the first time I ever was part of a fellowship. You know, a family of people that would do anything for anybody and all would come together every week, instead of going to, like Paul said, a building where the fellowship happens inside the building.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in a church, we're in an office space. You know, we do what we do no matter where we're at, no matter what our financial position is, no matter what happens, we're still able to fellowship no matter what. We could be meeting at the park every Sunday, but we're still a fellowship. We're still able to do what we do as a family. And, you know, and to me that's more important than a building or attaching our name to anything that is like a structure. I think a lot of times when people think, well, church, I go there for 3 hours a week, my kids are bored out of their minds, then I go home and then I do what I do all week and then I come back. You know, like the old saying, like, you don't go to church to look for perfect people.
Right.
You know, like you go to fellowship to help each other to become better.
And you really don't go to fellowship.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else want to? So, were many of you that raised your hand for fellowship and want to make a case or why you think we should be that? No? All right. Well, like I said, this was not the official vote. It looks like we're leaning very heavily toward fellowship. And so that means if those that like church will have a lot of convincing to do. But I'll talk with Sandy about this, and I think we may take an official vote maybe next Sunday. And it will be an in-person vote, so, well, maybe, I don't know, we'll talk about it. But we don't have to have unanimous, but we do, like I would say this would actually qualify as a win for fellowship. But like I said, today's not the official vote. I just wanted to kind of see where we're at. Are we all thinking the same thing? Pretty close. We're pretty close. So cool. Excellent. Any questions or other thoughts about the name? Yes.
Just one thing to consider for church, I think, like one of the fundamentals of bringing someone in could be explaining that the church isn't the building, that we are the church, and we're part of a larger church in the community and things like that. So it would be a great teaching point for people coming in.
For church.
Of church.
Church instead of fellowship. So who was it that said church? It was you two? Okay. All right, cool. Well, keep praying about it, and we'll probably make an official decision next week. And so each of us will have to ask the question, am I willing to go to, if I don't like it, a church or a fellowship? Is the name, is it a deal breaker for you or anything like that? So hope not. But we would like to actually go ahead and settle on one so that we can move forward with all of the legal stuff as well as a logo and things like that. So cool. Awesome. Anything else before we close in prayer? You guys ready to be back in school next week?
Are you gonna keep the red around the reel, so there's one aspect in there?
Probably not blood.
But red.
Probably gonna have some kind of family feel to it, but probably stick with red. I think we all like that color.
Red and black.
But yeah, the logo process will probably take a little while too. You don't want to be too quick to settle on a logo. So awesome. Well, let's pray then. Lord, you're good and you're awesome and you're powerful. We worship you this morning. We thank you so much for making us a real family. Whether we're a fellowship or a church, Lord, you know who we are. We are your ecclesia. We are your called out ones. We are your holy ones, the saints. And Lord, I just thank you that you have chosen to bring us down a different path than many of the mainline churches, Lord, that you truly want to equip us to be disciple makers, not bottle feeders. And thank you for calling us to that and giving us the desire to do it. And we know that, as the scripture says, you will bring to completion what you begin. And so thank you for that. And we trust you in it. And we give you all our hearts, minds, and souls. We offer our bodies as living sacrifices to you, Lord, holy and set apart, pleasing to you. And we give you praise in Jesus' name, we all say. Amen. Thank you.
Shall we?